are foods that are very common that we've all grown up eating that aren't so good for us. And a great one that I always pick up with is they found microplastics in the blood vessels, in the clots. Whoa. In the 1970s and 80s, we started realizing that causes you to gain weight. Non-caloric sweeteners, you can eat them, they taste sweet, but they don't actually add any calories. That must be better, right? Well, we thought so. Trying to raise the alarm wherever I can, and I am taking as many actions as I can in my own house, is microplastics. Microplastics really are like the new smoking. Another thing that you want to actually be really, really mindful of are processed.
That's disgusting. That's what's in the. That's what you're getting when you get.
That's right.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Those people who had microplastics embedded in their clot had a 4-fold increase in the risk of having a fatal heart attack or stroke. One of the things, besides processed meats and nuclear foods and and sodas, I would say stay away from. Let's talk about the bad stuff. Look, we all know that there are foods that are very common that we've all grown up eating that aren't so good for us, right? And, one of the things that I got to say up front is I don't do what a lot of social influencers do. I don't food bash, brand bash. I don't try to shame people for what they eat. Listen, I love some snacks every now and then as much as the next person. And it's totally fine because if you spend most of the time activating your body's healthy systems, the hardwiring, you can afford to take a hit every now and then. It's like just putting some of that crappy gas in your tank every now and then. You're going to bounce right back. We're very, very resilient. That said, I do think it's important for people to understand that, we're beginning to understand why certain foods that are not so good are really bad for you. Okay. And a great one that I always pick up with is soda. Okay, whether you get the blue can or the red can, or whether you have regular soda or diet soda, any soda is really not healthy for you in the long run.
Even the zeros and the diets.
Especially those.
What do you mean, especially those?
Especially the diets. The history of soda goes, I think, back to France, where they were serving fruit juices, and somebody came up with this entrepreneurial idea. Let's bubble some things into the fruit juice and see if we can actually have a crowd pleaser. All right. And I think that was the birth of soda. All right. The soda fountain and everything else, right? You got to actually put the gas in there. Fast forward 20th century. Now you've actually got mass production of these sodas. Turns out that regular soda, regardless of what brand it is, actually contains a can of regular soda contains 7 to 9 teaspoons of cane sugar.
Wow. You
come to my house and I offer you a glass and I put 9 teaspoons of sugar in it and say, here, have this, Mel. You'd go, that's disgusting. I'm not going to do that. That's what's happening when you're actually drinking soda. Wow. Now, that amount of sugar overload, carb overload. We talked about carb overload earlier. All right. Now you're like really flushing out. That tank's filling up real fast now and spilling over. But on top of that, you're overloading your metabolism because remember those hormones that have to collaborate to be able to really bring in the blood sugar to make sure you got enough energy. When you flood that system, all right, your system doesn't go so well. It doesn't function so well. It starts to derail a little bit. Listen, a single can, even 2 every now and then, you're going to be just fine. All right. Your body's not going to love you for it, right, but it'll get back to itself pretty quickly. But, when I was in medical school, I remember distinctly, there was a classmate of mine, so future doctor at the time, who was bragging that he would have 2 6-packs of soda every single day to get through the day. I mean, that's 12 cans of soda. Geez, think about the amount of sugar that person was actually putting into his system every day.
It's like 108 teaspoons.
Yeah, right? I mean, just think about the big pile. Now, I will tell you that the reason that the zero version, the sugar-free version was developed was because, well, in the 1970s and 80s, we started realizing that sugar causes you to gain weight. So let's come up with something else. Well, classic to the industrial food mindset. Let's go invent something. Let's go invent artificial sweeteners, right? Non-caloric sweeteners. You can eat them. They taste sweet, but they don't actually add any calories. That must be better, right? Well, we thought so, except that research has shown that people who drink a lot of diet soda, they actually gain weight too.
Huh.
They also gain weight, all right? Even without sugar.
But hold on, because I thought that we talked earlier about the fact that calories are fuel and there's less calories.
Exactly. You're right about that. However, we also talked about the fact your gut microbiome helps you have good metabolism and burn fuel. And it turns out, and Mel, this is pretty new, like within just the last few years, the discovery that our gut bacteria is very sensitive to artificial sweeteners. And so artificial sweeteners actually kill off some of the good, healthy gut bacteria. So something that's well-intentioned, non-caloric sweetener, goes right down. We don't absorb any of it because it's not a calorie, goes down and feeds our gut microbiome, remember? And so what happens is the gut bacteria start to revolt. They don't do so well. Some of the gut die off. And now, guess what? Your metabolism isn't functioning normally. You're derailed from that hardwiring, and now you start to gain weight. So food number one that I think that you should stay away from are sodas, regular or diet. That's one of the ones that you want to stay away from. All right. Second food that I tell people to try to stay away from are these packaged health foods. Now, you go to the airport and you go to, you see the bar and it looks like it's got granola and all that kind of stuff in it. It seems like it'd be a healthy bar.
Yes.
Take a look at the ingredient label. Okay. And you will find that there are all these emulsifiers, the glue that holds the things together, sometimes artificial flavorings that are actually in there because, the healthy stuff doesn't have enough sweet hit for you. Sometimes artificial coloring. So it looks a little bit nicer. Or here's another one besides the bar. Like tree nuts are healthy, right? So you like almonds, macadamia, pistachios, cashews. Right, you go to the airport, you go to the convenience store part. Oh, let me go look for some in the health food section. There's nuts in a bag, all right, and they're barbecued flavored. Well, there's no such thing as called barbecued flavored. Take a look at the ingredient label. Those are red food coloring, yellow food coloring. They've got artificial seasonings. It's not even real chili pepper. It's like artificial stuff. It's designed to light it up. Anything that's manufactured like that to be healthy, please read the ingredient label. If it seems like it's Greek or Latin or you can't pronounce it quickly, it's probably an ultra-processed ingredient that's going to harm your health. It's going to increase oxidative stress. It's going to stress out your body. It's going to cause inflammation, maybe damage your gut microbiome. So again, I think stay away from that ultra-processed stuff that's got, if it looks like it might be nuclear colored, all right, that's probably not good
nuclear for your gut.
Nuclear for your gut. Don't nuke your gut. Check this out. I've got a guide on the foods to naturally balance hormones for women. I picked 5 foods that are packed with disease-fighting bioactives that are especially impactful for women, and I want to share it with you. It's yours right now for free in the caption below. All you have to do is click on the link below the video. Another thing that you want to actually be really, really mindful of are processed meats. Now, look, we all grew up with processed meats. I can remember, one of my earliest memories is like going to school with a paper bag with a sandwich my mom made with processed meats. You go to the deli. Do you know what, by the way, do you know why they call them a delicatessen or a deli?
No.
It's short for delicious. And it was actually coming from the people that were trying to figure out how to actually sell leftover meat products in a way that would be delicious. So a lot of these salamis, bolognas, all the stuff that you would actually see in a deli are all put together from little scraps of meat that come as byproducts of the food industry. First, I'm going to come back to that, but first let's talk about why it's not so good for you.
That's disgusting. That's what's in that's what you're getting when you get sliced meat?
That's right.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Do you think that a turkey comes in a square?
Well, it kind of looks like a breast. I don't know. I see organic on the package because as you're saying processed meat, you're talking about like sliced meats.
Yeah. I'm talking about the kind that, like at the deli, they move them back and forth.
Yes.
They
What's
slice
wrong
these
with
things.
that?
Well, it turns out that the World Health Organization has identified that these processed meats, all right, and we're not talking about like freshly butchered, prepared at home or at a restaurant, but these processed meats contain all kinds of chemicals to be able to actually get them to where they are. And they have been classified as a class 1 carcinogen by the World Health Organization. All right. We're talking about bologna, salami, pepperoni. And by the way, I remember I had a patient once who was a former USDA inspector. Okay. And he was retired by then. And I would love to talk to my patients about their jobs, like things that I didn't know, like the lobster guy what happens in a lobster boat? Well, this guy, USDA inspector, I would say, tell me, spare no details. Tell me everything about the meat inspection. He's like, well, let me just tell you, I had to change my boots, my rubber boots, every 4 months because the stuff on the floor, the liquid from the places that made processed meats would dissolve my boots.
Oh my
and
God.
So that made me that kind of cued me in that there's probably stuff in the meats that are not so good for you. And it's not just the nitrates. I mean, it's like the synthetic nitrates that they put in there, other preserves and coloring. But class 1 carcinogen, abundant evidence that it likely to increase a risk for cancer, especially colon cancer. Not surprisingly, right? You're eating a lot of this stuff and it goes down to your gut. But I learned something recently that, when you go to the deli, and let's say you're ordering bologna or salami, right? It's a meat in a cylinder, and animals don't come in cylinders like that. But again, this is the meat scraps. And I learned about this, by the way, from a podcast called Science Versus. It's a really good podcast. And what I found out, because I'm learning about this, is that originally the meat scraps are all put together, and then the U.S. military invented a meat glue that would take scraps that you could pulverize and stick in there. Like the particle board that we actually have for wood. Like you go to the big box stores. These deli meats are basically the particles are meat particles that are glued together and then molded into a cylinder.
Well, it's true. It does come in a tube wrapped in plastic.
Exactly.
I just assumed that was a part of an animal's body.
Totally
that's been
not.
Wow.
All right.
So if I buy though sliced meats and it says organic, still,
I would just say, okay, look,
you're killing me, Dr. Lee.
Listen, by the way, I'm a reasonableist. So if your favorite thing is a bologna sandwich, knock yourself out, enjoy it, but just take the time to really savor it and don't do it very often.
Got
all
it.
right. You know that it's not good. Listen, not to speed on the highway, but we all do it every now and then, but don't speed all the time because that's what's going to lead to a car crash. So I'm not endorsing people to go out to eat deli meat. What I'm saying is that just like the soda, just like, the nuclear snack foods, processed meat ain't good for you. All right. It tastes good. We grew up with it, but it's not good for you.
What else should we avoid?
All right. I'm going to tell you something you're going to be surprised by, and this is new research, and that's bottled water.
Why do we avoid bottled water?
The water isn't the problem. It's the bottle. And we're beginning to realize that these bottled waters, I mean, come on, like I used to carry around bottled water all the time with me. All right. You're supposed to stay hydrated, right?
Right.
Okay. Any vacation you go to, you're getting a bottle of water in your hotel room. Turns out that now we realize that the bottled water, the bottles of plastic bottles are shedding microplastics into the water. So while we don't taste it, we're actually pouring plastic into our bodies. All right, little tiny particles, plastic particles. And you know how much plastic we are ingesting on average every week?
No.
A credit card's worth of plastic.
Really?
Every week we're ingesting it. Now, listen, we've known this for some years, but and I used to be asked this all the time, what's the consequence of the plastic? And I used to, just only a few years ago say, we don't really know. It seems like it's probably okay. Our body must get rid of it somehow. Now we know just in the last 24 months, so this is new, all right? I'm telling you a bunch of new stuff, that microplastics are detectable in the human body and they're associated with badness. Let me tell you, there was a study that came out of Italy with neurologists and cardiologists that looked at people with clogged blood vessels, cardiovascular disease, in the large vessels that feed their brain, and they were narrowed down. And what they found is that when they took out the clog, right? So it's kind of like calling a plumber in to clean the drain. When they cleaned the drain and removed the plaque, the clogging of the blood vessels, they found that they could detect plastic embedded in the narrowing of blood vessels that would be feeding the brain. More importantly, they found a correlation. The people who had plastics embedded in their blood vessels had a four times increase in having a fatal heart attack or stroke.
Whoa.
Okay. That's serious stuff. Subsequently, we've actually discovered you can actually find plastic in the brain. In fact, you can take a kitchen scale and measure two human brains, and you know which one's got more plastic in it. It's heavier. You can measure it. Like, like you're measuring flour for making cookies or whatever. You can actually measure the amount of plastic in the human brain. And we found plastic in the blood circulation. We never looked at it before, but in a vial blood in a doctor's office, if you looked for it, you can actually find plastic circulating in it. And we've actually found plastic in human testicles. We found it in human semen. Don't ask me how it gets down there. And it's also found by urologists who are actually doing surgery. They've actually found it in the flesh of the penis, embedded in there, probably from years and years and years of being exposed to plastic.
Now, is that like I don't mean to, like, it sounds terrifying, but what should you be drinking your water out of? Glass?
So number one, let me just give you some real practical stuff. All right. Water, if you want water, drink, put it in a glass container.
Okay.
Not a plastic container. And for those of you who are bringing your water bottles to the gym, get a metal one or get one that's lined with glass on the inside. Take the plastic ones, toss them out immediately. And when you go back to the kitchen, go root around your drawers and your cabinets, and anything that you might have once used to store leftovers, the plastic stuff, plastic containers, the plastic top, out it goes. All right. Replace it with ceramic or glass. Okay. Cups in your cupboard. You've got, the ceramic mugs. You've got the glasses for, your guests. You might some plastic ones that are out there. You got it at a ball game or whatever. Out. Throw it out.
And now I feel like an idiot because I've handed you a silicone glass, so it doesn't don't drink out of it, Dr. Lee.
Don't listen. I mean, I'm telling you, microplastics are a big deal. Now, I'll tell you, it's almost impossible to get away from microplastics. They're everywhere in the environment. They're in the new carpets. They're in the HVAC systems of our house.
Yeah, but that's different than actually ingesting it in your food.
We breathe it in and it gets into our body as well. But you're right. What I'm trying to say is that for foods that you want to avoid, okay, you want to stay away from plastics whenever you can. That means don't microwave something with a plastic top or with a saran wrap on top. That means don't buy food that's pre-packed in plastic. Those kinds of quick eat meals that you could actually have. All right. It's got a big plastic thing that you nuke in the microwave and you put a fork to let the steam out. Mm-hmm. All that stuff is just coating it with plastic.
And obviously impacting our metabolism.
And we believe that those, by the way, there's people have been talking about this for years, like maybe these microplastics are endocrine disruptors. And that's why we're actually having problems with our hormones. I don't know. I haven't seen enough data on that. I mean, listen, I'm a scientist. So here's the thing about scientists, like a real scientist. And I know you've talked to a bunch of them. A real scientist will tell you what they know, but they'll also tell you when they don't know something. And I don't know enough information about hormone disruptors and microplastics, but I do know, because I'm a vascular guy, I study blood vessels. I do know that the little particle bits that are stuck in your blood vessels are linked to real serious health outcomes and badness. And so for me, one of the things besides processed meats and, nuclear foods and, and sodas, I would say stay away from water in a bottle or water in a container that's plastic, because you have a choice. You can get one out of glass.
You have very strong opinions about what we do on airplanes.
On an airplane?
Yes, what not to drink or
Okay.
eat.
Well, listen, to do my research and to work with my colleagues, I do travel quite a bit. So I know a lot, as I'm sure you do, about sitting on a plane. And one of the things about planes that's kind of crazy is that, we're instinctively served beverages and foods. And, if you're like me, I'm working on my laptop and somebody comes by and hands me something, my instinct is to take it, right? I mean, and it's free. I kind of think, well, you paid for it, but it seems like it's something that I should eat. Well, there's a couple of things that I don't do. I don't drink coffee or tea on an airplane. And the reason I don't is because a lot of people don't know this, but the water from your coffee or tea comes from a tank in the airplane, right? And they don't clean that tank but once or twice a year.
Ew.
And so what happens when you actually have a container you don't clean very often? It's pretty disgusting. And I don't even want to go into the chassis of an airplane to take a look at the rusty old tank with all the crud that's in the bottom that they are actually using and pouring out. Now, listen, the place where the flight attendants are actually making the coffee looks pretty clean. The coffee looks okay. I can't taste anything, but I'm somebody that I know enough that I care about what I put into my body. And I would rather get a glass container of water or coffee, or better yet, bring your own thermos, metal thermos or glass thermos. Fill up your own coffee. All right. Obviously after security, and bring it on. And now you know that you actually have something reliable that doesn't have weird stuff. And listen, a rule of thumb for anybody listening to this, keep weird stuff out of your body. Any chemicals, anything you can't pronounce, anything you have no idea why it's there. Now that I told you about meat glue, it's stuff that you just kind of don't really want. Even if we grew up with it, listen, there's so many things that, we're getting smarter about things that are good for us, but we're also getting a little smarter about things that are not good for us. Hey there, it's Dr. Lee. I share a lot in my YouTube videos, but sometimes we need a deeper, more personal dive into how food can be used as medicine. And that's why I created my Eat to Beat Disease course. You'll have me as your teacher and guide to unlock the full potential of food that can be used to boost your health. My course is packed with the latest science and practical strategies. It's all designed to be easily followed and something you can start using right away. So whether you want to prevent a disease or fight a disease or just optimize your health for longevity, my course has got you covered. So if you're ready to make a positive change, click on the link below or scan the QR code on the screen right now. I can't wait to see how you're going to get started to improve your health using food. Now, back to the video. That I'm telling my community, I am trying to raise the alarm wherever I can, and I am taking as many actions as I can in my own house, is microplastics. Microplastics really are like the new smoking. Okay. We know smoking is bad for you. People denied it for a long time. We've also known that microplastics are everywhere. And I was, honestly, I was kind of blowing it off myself for a number of years. People used to say, well, what do you think about this plastic cup you're drinking from, or the water bottle? Look, it wasn't so long ago where if you went on vacation to a sunny environment, somebody would hand you a bottled water out of a plastic bottle, and you probably drink it like on a really hot day, and you want to stay hydrated, right? Now we know those plastic water bottles are shedding microplastics. There's a definition. It's less than 5 millimeters of size of plastic. You might even be able to see them. They're like the tiny little plastic particles that get shed into anything that's plastic that just breaks down. All right. And then there's nanoplastics, which are less than 1 micrometer. That's like a 10,000 times smaller. You can't see that at all. And they're coating everything. Pantyhose, you put on pantyhose, not you, but if somebody puts on pantyhose, you're going to be spraying some of that stuff just by snapping the fiber into the air. It goes right into your lungs. It's so small, it gets absorbed into your bloodstream. And we now know that you can actually find microplastics in your blood. We know that microplastics are in our food. They're in our beverages, anything plastic bottle. They're in anything that you turn into a beverage or food that starts with plastic. Something I was stunned by is that a tea bag, a typical tea bag, and this was done by a research study, made out of paper, I thought, actually was sprayed with a little bit of plastic on the outside by the manufacturer so that the paper doesn't rip and all the tea leaves come out. All right. I guess it makes sense from a manufacturer's perspective, but you dunk that tea to steep the tea, it sheds 1 billion plastic particles into a mug of tea. 1 billion from one tea bag, and you're drinking it. So how does this like add up? Well, the most recent estimates is that many of us in America are eating the equivalent of 1 credit card's worth of plastic in our body every week. Okay, so until recently, when somebody said, Dr. Lee, is that bad? I said, we don't have any evidence of if it's bad or not. It's something I'd like to avoid. Now we have the evidence. A study that was done out of Italy about 1.5 years ago found in people who had cardiovascular disease, so they had damaged blood vessels, they had plaques, narrowing of their blood vessels, specifically the blood vessels feeding their brain, all right? And they found when they were doing the procedure, the standard medical procedure to take out the blockage, so you can go in there and fish out the plaque and open up the blood vessel, they found microplastics in the blood vessels, in the clots. Wow. Whoa. They're studying embedded in the clots. And then when they actually did the outcome studies, they found those people who had, not everybody had plastics, but a lot of people did. Those people who had microplastics embedded in their clot had a 4-fold increase in the risk of having a fatal heart attack or stroke.
Crazy. I think they were even some of the things that came out of there. We talked about the study with my cardiologist. The people that had the highest exposure of plaque, there was some higher amounts of microplastics that were there along with it.
Right. And think about the things that cause plaque, right? Ultra-processed foods with unhealthy fats packaged in plastic that you might microwave, and having all that stuff out there. So, I mean, look, I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that this is a new concern. A few other maybe data points that might be helpful for your listeners to say before. I always try to take people's anxiety down when we talk about stuff like this, but I think there's a few more points that are worth floating out there because this is all relatively new discoveries and research about us. Like earlier, we were talking about the discoveries that are positive. Like, okay, let's be fair. There are some things that we should be alert about, and microplastics is one of them. We're now able to measure microplastics in your bloodstream. We don't do it routinely, but you can measure it in the blood. You can measure it in the plaques, the narrowing of your arteries. And they've also found microplastics in human brain. So much microplastics, by the way, that if you could take a kitchen scale, the kind you'd measure out for weighing dough for a cake, all right, and you can measure the weight of the plastic in the brain on a kitchen scale, all right. It's not the old type of scale with a chain, but a very sensitive scale. That's how much plastic can accumulate in your brain, and that plastic has been shown to stimulate inflammation. Not surprisingly, brain inflammation clearly associated with cognitive defects, brain fog, all these other things you don't want to have. And we're scratching our heads saying, hey, why are we a society dealing with so much dementia? I don't know. Maybe the microplastics are playing a role. It's not the magic bullet answer, but wow, this is another thing that we need to be aware of. Found it in testicles. All right. So if you're a guy and you're like, I ain't scared of no microplastic. If I told you it's in your balls, all right, you might think twice. They find it in urologists who are doing surgery on the human penis, have found microplastics studded in the tissue, in the muscle of the penis. How did it get there? I don't know, but obviously it somehow got there from the bloodstream or some other way. You can guess on that. But the fact of the matter, they found it in the penis. They found it in human semen.
Well, one of the theories is that all this polyester clothing that we're wearing has microplastics inside of it.
Oh yeah.
So when you're wearing polyester underwear, men or women, and all this athleisure that is so common, it's not like we're wearing organic cotton all the time, or wool, or cashmere, or whatever. We're using all these synthetic fibers. These synthetic fibers, they shed microplastics. And then we are also drinking tap water, a lot of us.
Running through plastic pipes.
It's running through plastic pipes, but also all this, in America especially, all these clothes that we wash, it's in the wash cycle. You take the microplastics, go through the water system. And from my understanding from EWG, we don't have the advanced filtration abilities, even in America here, to get rid of things like microplastics. This is why I'm a huge fan of just having a high quality filter at home.
Yeah.
Because, thank goodness that we have access to clean water in the United States, which means it doesn't have bacteria. We're not going to get typhoid or other things like that, which is how a lot of people were dying from poor sanitation previously in the world. But now we have this new problem. Like you said, it's the modern day smoking that we're dealing with, and it's plastics. And so I had heard somebody, it's actually a great quote. I've shared it before. I had heard a speaker a long, long time ago in the whole raw food movement that I was once part of. They used to say that either you get a filter or your body becomes the filter.
That's a good one.
And there's a lot of good options that are out there. Don't get a Brita, because that's mostly focused on just removing chlorine for taste, but get a good quality reverse osmosis.
What kind of filter do you have?
I have reverse osmosis.
Okay.
Now, the criticism that people have is that, reverse osmosis takes out all the good minerals that are inside. I don't know about you, but I'm not drinking tap water to get minerals, right? You can add some trace minerals back in a few times a week. You can add some electrolytes.
And actually, you can get most of the minerals from the food that you eat.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm not worried about that aspect. And occasionally I'll add in with my big 32 ounces of water that I'll take to the gym in the morning. I'll just put in a few trace minerals. There's a brand, I have no affiliation. It's called Trace Minerals. Great. That's out there. There's plenty of other brands that are there. So I use reverse osmosis.
Okay.
I don't want that exposure that's there. And I think that's one of the easiest things that people can do.
Well, look, I mean, this is a great conversation. It's really practical, right? So we all drink water. We all have water running in our houses. I mean, hopefully you do. And here's a simple way to address a concern, but it's still surround sound with plastic, right? So what are the things that I tell people that are really common sense? First of all, don't eat off of plastic plates or use plastic silverware or drink from a plastic cup. Think about the summer picnic, or the big house party that you actually have. And, like, what do? You go out and go to the store and you buy the party plates and the party silverware. It's all plastic, right? Not only do you throw it away like that evening or that later the next day, but for the environment, but people are eating off of those. And there's no doubt that they're shedding microplastics as well. So avoid plastic plates and silverware and cups.
From what I've also understood, I don't know if you've connected with her, but she's an incredible researcher in this space and now advocate. Her name is Dr. Yvonne Burkhart. She is a toxicologist by training who got super sick by working in the food and the fragrance industry with all these different additives and flavors. And she developed a bunch of different illnesses, removed herself from that exposure and started to clean up her life and became now an advocate for what she calls a low tox lifestyle. All very basic things of how we can protect ourselves. She said, one thing that I want people to be aware of now that they're talking about plastics is that we have to also just be aware that even a lot of paper cups, for example, if we had this piece of paper right here where I have my show notes that I did for preparation of this podcast, if we turned it into like a little cup and we poured water, it would basically disintegrate, especially hot water. It would melt, or it would at least start to break down. It wouldn't stay firm. Now, when we go to a coffee shop, and again, this is about doing our best, right? It's not about getting overly anxious or worrying. When we get a paper cup, we have to understand that these paper cups, the reason that they don't disintegrate is because they're coated.
With plastic.
And often that coating is plastic.
Exactly.
So just very simply, you can get a mug. Many coffee shops, even here in LA, will give you a discount.
Metal, glass. Those are the ways to actually go.
Have you started doing that even in your own life? Is that something that you try to do?
100%.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not always perfect. There's sometimes you're there in an airport and you're traveling and you want a cup of coffee and you don't have access and they don't have takeaway cup. They don't have here cups. But I would say 99% of the time, I'm going to be having a cup with me or going to ask for a cup.
It's an easy thing to do. Listen, if you are athletic and you go to work out and you bring your water bottle, swap it out from the plastic one to one with made out of metal or glass.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a really easy fix. I also think that not buying food that's been packaged in plastic is really important. All right. I mean, and by the way, you can go to the produce section and buy lovely cherry tomatoes that are found in a plastic box with a plastic top. All right. And then you're going to wash it with unfiltered water in your house, and you're pretty much marinating this thing with, it's been marinated, and you're going to wash it more with plastic water containing plastic, right? So again, I sort of try to be more selective of buying foods that are not pre-packaged in plastic.
It's tough.
It is very tough.
Because even like my wild-caught salmon or my grass-fed beef, even if you get it at Whole Foods in like, you know, or like an Erewhon or whatever in the sort of deli section where it doesn't look like it's touching plastic. If you go behind and you see when they're getting it initially,
they're wrapped in plastic.
It's wrapped in plastic.
This is actually a modern conversation, Drew, that I think needs to be had. And hopefully there will be people in government and people in the private sector and companies. They're going to want to come together and have this intelligent conversation to say, listen, this is a new discovery. We didn't realize this was happening. What do we do collectively to make better decisions so that the public is actually going to be less exposed to these toxins, even if it's impossible? Like, you know, if I ever have hesitation about the plastic thing, I just, in my mind, I'm picturing a credit card. Do I want to be eating that this week? No. So I'm going to try to make another decision. But, you know, plastic food containers, you know, you got leftovers. What do we used to do? You go to the, you know, Tupperware. I don't think that company's around anymore, but not good. Don't put your food in a plastic container, all right? And then you put it in the fridge where you may have had foods that you cooked in glass or metal or, you know, cast iron or whatever, and now you have just put it into a plastic container overnight to marinate with the plastic. And then you're going to heat it up the next day in the microwave, and now you're going to actually put more or cook it or heat it up, you know, in the plastic. No, don't do it. So I always say, toss out your plastic storage containers. I know they're cheap. I know they're convenient. I know they're light. I know they're things that you can easily take to work for the next day if you're trying to heat up some lunch. But please, just get glass containers. It's okay if the top is plastic, honestly. It's not going to touch the food for the most part, but because it's really hard to find a glass top. You know, nobody's going to be carrying around a glass box everywhere they're going, all right? But minimize the amount of plastic. Those are avoidable things. And the other thing that I heard Sanjay Gupta from CNN, who I know, say about microplastics, he said, change out your toothbrush. I didn't think about this, but yeah, if you keep using the same toothbrush the whole time, breaks down. And now you are deliberately putting microplastics that are going to break down into your mouth and rinsing them around, and you're going to be swallowing some. And so just make sure you change out your toothbrush, you know, and don't change them out before they wear down.
That's great. I have another low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
That's based on some research that we wrote about in my newsletter, which is that if you have Teflon pans that have scratches on them, inside of those Teflon pans is basically a coating of plastic in the layers that are there. That's part of it. These PFAs, these microplastics that are there. And they found that just a single scratch on an average size skillet for a Teflon pan, because these pans develop scratches over a period of time, can leach up to 1,000 to 10,000 microplastics and nanoplastics every time you cook. So an easy solution, that's also actually a cheap solution, is that all the researchers that I've talked to say stainless steel is great. It's cheap. Now, there can be fancier solutions that are out there. There are companies that sell ceramic and that sell this and that, but just stainless steel, and it's going to last forever. And you're not going to have that same exposure. So take a look at your pans, especially the ones that are Teflon, or even if they're the ceramic coating that has scratches on it, that can be detrimental to your long-term health. So just go for a cheap solution. Stainless steel is the cheapest and easiest.
And I will tell you, again, back to simplicity. If you want a pan that's going to last a long time, that is kind of a workhorse in the kitchen, just look at what chefs use. All right. I mean, I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends who actually are either cooks or chefs. They all use stainless steel pans. That's the workhorse in a restaurant. And at home, like I have stainless steel pans, or cast iron, which is heavier. and you get a little bit of iron actually from cast iron. If you're iron deficient, like when you cook in a cast iron pan, you get a little bit of the iron, and you can season and condition them. If you have a stainless steel wok, okay, if you condition it the right way and take care of your pots and pans and woks the right way, they actually make a nonstick surface. All right, so you don't need to have that NASA developed space age, 1960s innovation in order to be able to have a real workhorse. And I think that's what people need to have. I teach an online course called Eat to Beat Disease course. And one of my favorite modules in my course is about rethinking your kitchen. And I tell people, like, what are the things you should toss out that are not good for your health and swap in, and keeping simple cookware, stainless steel pan, cast iron skillet, and a wok. That can, and pots made of the same kind of material. That's actually that gets you the whole way in terms of like almost every situation for cooking. Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.